This is Daily Armenia, ＳիվիլNeթ's daily news digest. Here's what's making headlines in Armenia today. Nikol Pashinyan sparked outrage when statements he made Friday appeared to question aspects of the Armenian Genocide. At a meeting in Switzerland with the Armenian community, Pashinyan said, "We need to revisit the history of our genocide in order to comprehend the events, reasons behind them, our perceptions of it, and who was involved." He rhetorically asked why there hadn't been discussion of the tragedy in 1939, but there was in 1950. How did this shift occur, he asked. Should we understand these questions or not? The International Armenian National Committee, the advocacy arm of the Armenian Revolutionary Federation, declared in a statement, "It is obvious that the Prime Minister of Armenia is no longer pursuing a policy of refusing international recognition of the Armenian Genocide, but rather of denying the Armenian Genocide." They pointed out that the word genocide was not coined until after 1939, when amid World War II and the Holocaust, lawyer Raphael Lemkin invented the term, saying he was inspired by past events, including the treatment of the Armenians in 1915. Former Armenian Foreign Minister Vahan Kostanyan also commented on the matter. Nikol Pashinyan's recent remarks questioning the veracity of the Armenian Genocide and its scale are not just shocking, they are outright disqualifying for someone tasked with leading Armenia. He has embraced the language of denial. Armenia's current foreign minister, Ararat Mirzoyan, said last October that campaigning for the recognition of the Armenian Genocide is not a top priority for his ministry. "Our primary focus is ensuring peace and stability around Armenia, with normalizing relations with Azerbaijan being our key step," Mirzoyan said in parliament. Armenia's major strategy focuses on preventing a war with Azerbaijan, Pashinyan said in an interview for the country's TV Channel 1 on Saturday. He also added that the Armenian government is optimistic about the ongoing border delimitation process and ruled out ceding any critical infrastructure to Baku. "There are forces in our region and outside of it who are aiming to escalate the situation. To do that, they use a war of words," he said, explaining that his government is determined to prevent escalation and will respond to everything in a way so as to avoid war, or at least not to provide any pretext or excuse for aggression. This was likely a reference to Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev's press conference earlier this month, where he labeled Armenia a fascist state and threatened it with war. He also demanded the so-called Zangezur corridor be opened, connecting mainland Azerbaijan with its Nakhichevan exclave through Armenian territory, allowing Azerbaijani vehicles to cross into Armenia with no border controls. During the interview, Pashinyan made the alarming assertion that Armenia has intelligence indicating Azerbaijan is using psychoactive substances on Armenian prisoners held in Baku to extract statements aimed at provoking regional escalations. He explained that these actions pose a serious threat to Armenia and assured that all available means are being used to resolve the prisoner situation. Azerbaijan's foreign ministry later dismissed this claim. Addressing domestic political matters, Pashinyan firmly stated there are no plans for snap elections on his cabinet's agenda. Instead, he said his recent increased social media activity stems from the need for greater transparency and communication with citizens. Armenia is to hold parliamentary elections in June 2026, with Pashinyan's Civil Contract Party seeking to remain in control of the government for a third consecutive term. The Prime Minister also addressed gender representation in government positions, stating that appointments are made based on the candidate's effectiveness rather than their gender. This comes as Armenia has seen a recent sharp rise in senior female officials, notably in law enforcement and national security. Prominent appointments include Justice Minister Surbu Higalyan and Interior Minister Arpine Sargsyan, who were both added to the government in a major cabinet shakeup last November, as well as Prosecutor General Anna Vardabetyan and Foreign Intelligence Service Chief Kristine Grigoryan earlier. Deputy Foreign Minister Vahan Kostanyan is on a visit to Syria, where he met with the country's newly appointed foreign minister. In a tersely worded statement posted today on the social platform X, Kostanyan wrote, discussed the perspectives of development of relationships between Armenia and Syria with FM Asad al-Shaibani, agreed to continue the cooperation. Last month, Turkish-backed militant forces overthrew the 5-decade rule of the Assad family. A civil war began in Syria in 2011, but the regime had been able to hold on to power thanks to support from Iran and Russia. The large Armenian community centered in Aleppo was scattered by the war, with many of its members fleeing to Armenia or other points abroad. Armenia was one of the few countries that had good relations with the Assad regime. In 2019, the Armenian military deployed a small, non-combat humanitarian contingent to Aleppo with the support and encouragement of Russia, a move that was criticized by the United States. The group was evacuated in late November as Islamist rebels approached the city. Armenia also briefly evacuated its embassy and consulate from the country in December, but resumed operations shortly afterwards. Almost 2 months after the fall of the Assad regime in Syria, how is the Armenian community there reacting, and what are their plans for the future? Read our article featuring 2 young Syrian Armenians, in which they tell ＳիվիլՆեթի about how their families are doing in an Aleppo that is now controlled by Turkish-backed militants, as well as the difficult journeys they made to get out of the country to reach Yerevan, and whether they'd feel safe to go back. You can find a link to the report in this video's description. And as always, please follow ＳիվիլՆեթի for the latest news and independent reporting from our contributors on the ground here in Armenia.